Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. Amma ba'd. My dear respected brothers, elders and sisters, first and foremost, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, apologies for the delay. There's been a bit of a technical issues here, hence the reason why there's been a slight delay with that. But past two sessions we have been covering the engagement with our children, and we wanted to continue with that. But this week we wanted to specifically concentrate on engagement with our children who are not able-bodied, specifically who have learning disabilities. Why this? Because Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man lam yarham saghirana wa ya'rif haqqa kabirana falaysa minna." Basically, whoever does not show mercy to our youngsters or acknowledge the right of our elders is not one of us. But I'll elaborate that a bit further bit towards the end, inshallah. But we past two sessions we have been covering the importance of having values, importance of engagement with our children, the environmental factors, the importance of being a positive role model, the importance of showing shafqat and rahmah and mercy, importance of being compassionate with our children, the importance of being kind, the importance of being an educator, the importance of being seen as a positive role model for our children. But often what happens is that we overlook the needs of our children with learning disabilities purely because of our ignorance, lack of understanding, and predominantly because of our own prejudice towards these children. Often as a result of misunderstanding, what happens is we can associate these conditions or these issues associated with a child being affected by jinn and running around towards raqis and running towards and looking after, going in search of taweez, etc., etc. And that can be quite expensive process for many of us. As well as it being emotionally and physically and mentally draining for us as adults, it can also be a very expensive process that we are chasing after doctors and raqis and people who are experts in taking away jinns, and people falsely people exploiting you because they see you in vulnerable position and that you are parashan and you are in anxiety, just looking to make sure that you're providing the right care for your child, and often what happens is misdiagnosed. So today I wanted to alleviate some of that so we can recognize what they are and how can we deal with the child accordingly. And also we'll cover some of the behavior management techniques, behavior management strategies, and predominantly today I'll be giving you my own experience of dealing with these kind of children for a long time. And specifically I worked in a school for nearly 2.5 years as an educator, one-to-one mentor and one-to-one work amongst another 120 staff members, and that was the last stage for a lot of these children before they went into jail or they were institutionalized. And what would happen is often is it was a private education setting. So what would often happen is the children would come to the school for 6 hours and 4 hours, and although they were 13 and 14 and 15 and 16, they were emotionally at the age of say 7, 8, 9 and 10. A majority of the time they were displaying behaviors sometimes far below than that. So toddler behavior, although in a teenage body, toddler behavior. So I'll be sharing some of the experience. Also then afterwards dealing with children who are not necessarily looked after by their own parents, or who's had trauma, or who've been looked after by other than their mom and dad by somebody else, i.e. foster carer, foster parents, or uncle and aunties, or older brother or older sister, and so forth and so forth. And I could share some of that experience with you. But today, within that, you see the key thing that we need to take so far is the engagement with a child is critical for us. Traveling with a child and going through a journey with them, seeing the world through their eyes, seeing the world through their eyes, and seeing them child, the tomorrow's future leader, seeing the child as the rough diamond or rough gem that needs fine tuning, it's critical. Okay, seeing the children and fine tuning them is absolutely critical. So where was I? Yes, seeing the child as a rough diamond, or seeing the child as a rough gem, and seeing the child in a unique way. So in other words, our mindset needs to be that this child is a tomorrow's leader, this child is a tomorrow's scholar, this child is a tomorrow's CEO, this child is a tomorrow's prime minister, this child is a tomorrow's leader, where the world will be following that. This child is a tomorrow's imam of the local mosque, the imams of the Jami mosque, or the imams of the biggest mosque in the world, Haramain. That way what happens is, in our mindset, we are already preparing that child for the future. But if you're seeing that child, as a baby, what happens is then we're not regarding that child, we're not valuing the child. And if you're not teaching that child accordingly, then tomorrow what happens is that child will not develop accordingly either. Unfortunately, that can have profound effect if the child is born with some additional needs, i.e. learning disabilities. Learning disabilities is unlike physical impairments, is to do with our neurons, our brains, lack of development here and there. That's what it refers to normally. And out of that, you have one which is quite distinct, is autism. So autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia we face on a regular basis. Those who work with children, those who are school teachers, or those who are social workers, or those who are working for local authorities can give you a bit more information regarding that. But they will tell you children with additional needs often and majority of the time are misunderstood. Because you see, a child with learning disability often cannot express the inner feelings and inner anxieties. Why they can't feel and express the inner anxieties and inner feelings is because they can tell, they know themselves, they are not like the other children. And often that can be debilitating, and that can be quite a massive obstacle for themselves. So they become their own worst enemy. They can't move forward because they can't interact with the children. For example, autistic child, they like the routines, they can be repetitive in their behavior, they can be very stubborn in their behavior also. And the biggest one is they will give you lack of eye contacts and not knowing how to interact socially. So they will have very less friends in school. Be it in school, be it at home as well, the social circle is very, very small. Well, as children with dyslexia, what happens that they struggle to make patterns. They struggle to see patterns in how we can spell things. They often see the letters wrong way around, or the words wrong way around, or the words are traveling like a zigzag. And that's how they struggle to pronounce word. The syllables are not correct, pronunciation of words are not correct. Speech impediment, that can happen also. Then you got dyspraxia, their movements, the bodily movements are not correlated with each other. When our body moves, usually our brain gives a signal. There is a bit of a mismatch here and there. There's here a bit of a mismatch between the brain giving the signals and the body reacting. And that's what happens. But the most important thing is what happens, the children in the school ground, or those who are not adequately trained, or those who don't know what it is, they tend to label that child. This child is stupid, this child is this child is idiot. And we start giving these names, or naughty, or this child is very, very naughty, very, very bad, very, very silly, very, very stupid. It could be that whatever you're presenting to that child, they're not comprehending it. They're struggling to grasp it. Not everybody is same. You're not same, I'm not same, our fingers are not same. We're all different. The point that I'm trying to make is, we have to see children with learning disabilities as having extra needs. That is all. They are not silly, they are not stupid, they are not spastic. They just have additional needs, and we have to cater ourselves accordingly. Why? One of the greatest Khalifa of Islam, Hazrat Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah ta'ala, what did he do? He actually brought the welfare state, the government itself, the Muslim government, they had legislation in place to protect the vulnerable of the community. Because why? The Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, during the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were people who were also unable-bodied, and the Sahabas, they took turns to take care of these people. They were competing against each other, who can be the most friendly to that person. And I could name you a couple of Sahabas, Abdullah ibn Maktoum, Maktoum radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was blind, and people were actually competing against each other who can do his khidmah. So the point is, instead of seeing them as a burden, we should see them as a blessing. Why it's a blessing? Because again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, during my talks that I've been doing past week and a half, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is choosing us to be a sabab for that person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is choosing us through that person to do good. Because every good thing we do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us accordingly. The only difference between an able-bodied person and a child with a learning disability, or any person with a learning disability, is that they have additional needs and the environment needs to be catered accordingly. That is all. They are extremely sensitive. It's not a condition, it's not a condition, it's not disability per se, although it's learning disability, and the wording of the law is quite strange, which I don't agree with. The point is, they are extremely sensitive, that all the senses can play up. For example, autistic children can hear things very far and wide. Some of the sound that we can't hear. The smell, the senses of smell can be quite very strong. For example, I've got a pen here, and if I'm moving it on the table, that can be amplified many degrees. And that's why they struggle, because they don't know how to manage the sound, they don't know how to manage the smell, they don't know how to manage these things. So often in my experience of dealing with these children, what happened was, they go into a shell. They go in a little world, and they get isolated from the community. They get isolated from the mainstream community, because they don't know how to articulate this. And if they got brothers or sisters or a sibling, what happens typically is if his or her sibling don't have a learning disability or these issues, they tend to take out their anger and their frustration and internal anxieties on their siblings. And they can push the child, they can hurt the child, and they can use profanities, and they can be very stubborn in their ways. So what we need to do is, we need to at that time exert more patience. We need to exert more patience. We need to give more patience, show more patience. We need to be more patient with that child. And there is a cycle, because every child, the key theme past 2-3 sessions has been, every child cannot express their inner feelings. And we need to help that child to express their inner feeling. And that usually happens by verbalization. And there is a cycle, 4 cycle. For example, if the child is showing tantrums, I've noticed, I've seen children with falling on the floor and crying and hitting the doors and hitting other people. So immediately you need to isolate the problems. If the child is doing tantrum on the floor, fine, let him do the tantrum on the floor. But if there's any dangerous things, we need to isolate that, move that away. For example, seizure, etc. Then we have to, what do we need to do? We need to empathize with the child. For example, if the child is hurt and angry and screaming and shouting, no, I want this, we need to empathize with the child and say to the child, for example, I know you want this, you can't get it, and I know how hard it is, it must be really frustrating. So empathizing with the feelings, so showing feeling. Then take the child on a journey backwards. It's only 2 hours ago, only 3 days ago, only last night. For example, if the child says, I hate you, I don't like you, and they will say that sometimes because this is how they're feeling. It's how they're feeling inside. It's not because they hate you. It's because of lack of self-confidence. They hate themselves. So that you take them back. Only yesterday, you and I were good friends. You loved me. I love you. We had excellent time. We had a fantastic time. We had so much fun because of X, Y, and Z. Then you say, then when the child is calming down, more and calming down, you'll notice the child's body, everything loosening up. Initially, they get so tensed, and you can feel it. You can feel it that they're going to explode. And that's what happens with autistic children. They usually, if they can't express themselves, they will explode. So it's about keeping yourself aware and alert. Yes, physically and mentally and emotionally is draining, but you need to be alert to this. And over time, as a parent, as a family, as a sibling, you'll pick up these signals. So you need to be mindful of that. And what happens then is, you give them, and then you say to them, look, you know what you did about 10 minutes ago? You hit me, you beat me, you kicked me, you slapped me. I know you're frustrated, I know you're angry, and I know you're feeling bad inside you. How do you feel now? Because you know what happens if I were to do that to you, would you like it? The child will say no. Then what happens now is the child, autistic child, who's usually violent like that, initially they can't think and they will hit you. But once now they can think, they will go on an emotional journey now. They will hate themselves for hurting you. They will hate themselves more now for hurting you or hitting you or swearing at you or doing bad things at you. So again, we as adults, we need to go to that child again and say, mommy and daddy or brother or sister does not hate you. We love you dearly, and we are there for you at all times. We will be there for you at all times, no matter what happens. But when that happens, you need to think of something else. For example, I was working with a child, and every time that person would get frustrated, I would say, there's a nice soft cushion, here, smack this, hit this really hard. So every time the child would get frustrated, boom, he would hit it on the cushion softly, and his instant frustration would go. Because you're channeling that person's frustration and anger towards something else. Now, dealing with the child, with autistic child as well, or children who got severe behavioral problems, when they go into a zone, and I could give you a story, this is a real life story, it's not made up. Some of the children that I was working with, and there was a particularly a 16-year-old child who did not go out of his house for 2 years, and anybody that went to see him, he would use profanities and violent threats. So many professionals went to work with him, nobody was able to engage with that person because he used profanities, he used violent threats, and he was quite big, and they would be scared and they walk away. So I worked with that person for 3 months, and I broke him. Broke him in the sense that not break physically, but broke his stubbornness. And how I did that was, initially I took an interest in his lifestyle. Interest in his lifestyle, in terms of what he did, how he did, and continuously did salam to the person because he was a Muslim child. And slowly, I engaged with him. Every time I use this 4 cycle: the isolation, the empathy, journey, and then instilling feelings in that person. And all it did was, every time he got angry, I would isolate, watch myself in terms of what I'm doing and how I'm dealing with that person, and I would keep my distance from him. And then I would go on a journey, and I'd say, look, only yesterday you had lots of fun with me, only yesterday you wanted to do this, only yesterday or day before or the week before you wanted to do this. So I would take him on an emotional journey. But often if I can't do that, I would always carry a sponge ball with me or something very soft that if I were to throw it at that person, it would not hurt him. So usually when they go in a tantrum zone, they can't think because they go in a one-dimensional zone. So what I would do, I would grab something, anything soft, anything as soft, and I would throw it and here, catch. So when I say here, catch, that person will grab it. It's an instinct, human instinct reaction that what happens is, yes, they catch it. Instantly, they lost that focus from that being angry. Because they lost that focus, they could sort of wake up, like a bit like zombie. They're like, where was I? Was I dreaming? And that's what happens. Then I would break that cycle. So I call it the neurons disruption. Think about it this way: 2 brains, another 2 fuzzy electrons are there, and it's all making this bzzz sound. Just breaking that connection. You're disconnecting these things. As soon as it's disconnected, you got that person back. Now he's in your zone. That's one way of doing it. Another child is, if the child is like, say, 12-year-old, 9-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, and they're very severely misbehaved, what I would do is, I would never use any physical restraint, although I'm fully trained and fully insured, and I could do that. Everything is observational based. So when I would see that person going into an extreme zone, he's using bad language and he's threatening you and God knows what else he's doing, all the bad things in the world you could think of, what I would do, I would start using a language gibberish. And gibberish is not the gibberish that we talk about. It's literally a language that doesn't make sense. It's a language that doesn't make sense. And believe you me, these children, if they're autistic and they're supernatural, they usually are very clever in certain things. They're very, very clever in certain things. They're super smart in certain things. And they're very, very emotive people. They're very emotional. Although they might not show it, but they're very, very emotional. They feel it. And often they blame themselves for all the negativities around them. And with autistic children, there's many other factors that comes with it. For example, depression can happen as well later in life, and many other things. So anyway, language called gibberish. And what gibberish is all about, for example, if you know the child's interest, and the child's interest is politics or football, and we all know, for example, let's give an example. Like Liverpool manager. Who's the Liverpool manager? Klopp. Everybody knows Klopp. So if he knows that Klopp is, they say, oh, did you know Martin O'Neill, for example, who was a manager for something else? Did you know he got sacked by Liverpool? It doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense at all. You use that, and that person will snap at you. That's not true. Now what have you done? You just fished him. I call it the fishing terminology. You just grabbed his attention there. So you're distracting him away. So what are you doing? You're isolating the incident. You're isolating the problems. And this is what happens. So once you got that person's attention, now you know he's engaging with you. That's engagement with you. So you have to be very, very in tune with the child's emotion, in tune with the behavior. I keep saying in tune. You know, Prophet ﷺ, he was the most eloquent when it comes to being in tune with other people's feelings, including children. And I gave the example of him dealing with Hassan or Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when Prophet ﷺ in sajda, faraz sajda, in Jamaat, he delayed his salah, lengthened his salah and his sujood. Why? Because he was in tune with the child's feelings. The child was comfortable enough to distract a big majmu'ah. It's not like our majmu'ah these days where everybody's praying at home or doing this and doing that. By the time of Prophet ﷺ, even the munafiq used to come to Jamaat. Today, people coming to Jamaat is the biggest issue. It's just because of lockdown that we're not coming to Jamaat. But anyway, the point is, we have to be in tune with the child's emotion. So using a language called gibberish, a language that doesn't make sense to anybody. If you can do that, you will instantly grab the person's attention. It's about distracting from that person's, the one-dimensional attitude. If the person is breaking things, throwing things at the household items, and you want to distract him, throw a sponge ball at him maybe, throw cushion at him maybe, not to hurt him, but grab this. So you're distracting the zone, or start talking gibberish, and it always worked wonders for me. Second thing that we need to do, we need to work on our relationship with that child. Everything that we say, everything that we do, we have to be consistent. We have to be consistent. We cannot make false promises. If you do this, I'll take you outside and buy you a sweet at 4 o'clock. If you say 4 o'clock, you have to do it by 4 o'clock. If you say tomorrow, it has to be done. Whether you're alive or not, it doesn't matter. It has to be done. Obviously, if you're dead, then you can't do it. But the point is, if you make a promise to a child, especially with a learning disability, you have to do it. Because they will see you as the person who doesn't care about that person. You've broken it. Of course, in Islam, it's haram as well to lie to someone. So consistency. And I could go on and many other things I could discuss about. So consistency and always telling the person, look, I don't hate you. Doesn't matter what you do. Your behavior doesn't faze me. But as an adult, I have to tell you what it is. The reason I have to tell you and I have to do this for you is because X, Y, and Z. We need to explain to that child. The more explanation we do, question? Okay, I'll stop. 2 minutes? Okay. Where was I? Yes, we need children with more learning disabilities. We have to exert a lot of patience. Typically with a child, we have to exert patience anyway. We have to show a lot of patience. But with children with learning disabilities, we have to give more patience. We have to show more patience. And it can be quite draining for us adults. So for that reason, we have to take care of ourselves. So if you got a husband or a wife, then what you need to do, you need to go in partnership. When you need to take turns. And if you have someone third party that you can offload to, or do some exercise and take care of your physical health and mental health, like sleeping, resting, eating good food and drinking water, fluid, etc., that will be really, really helpful. That will be really good for you. Because if you're not in good condition, you can't take care of the child. And remember, that child is a mercy, that child is a rahmah, and that child is beneficial for us in every aspect. Because remember Prophet ﷺ saying, "Man lam yarham saghirana يعرف حق كبيرنا فليس منا. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, those who do not show mercy to our youngsters and acknowledge the right of our elders, they're not amongst us, they're not one of us. So if you want to be a good Muslim, if you want to be a good parent, we have to show patience. And the last thing we ever want to do is belittle our children. Belittling our children and labeling them, say, you're stupid, because of you I can't do this, etc., etc. You will have damaged that children. It's like shooting a child with an arrow constantly. There will be a lot of physical wounds in that person's life throughout their life. So I'll come back to these points again.
Okay, first question, children with autism, what active steps do we take for their Islamic education?
Subhanallah, subhanallah. What active steps do we take for our children with learning disabilities? Okay, I mean, the truth is, Islamic education, yes. The truth is, many of our institutions, and I need to put out my hands up, in my experience, I have found our institutions are lacking in the appropriate resources and support. The reason being is many of our organizations are charity funded. Majority of our institutions are charity funded. Therefore, resources are hard to get. Money is hard to get hold of, and resources are hard to get hold of. And that's why you'll see the environmental factors, the sensory the factors, all these things, and the training that goes to training their staff members are not always adequate. So to be honest with you, there's a lot of room for improvements. There are a lot of room for improvements in this regard. So what I would say in the interim basis, if you go online, you can see a lot of color-coded things. Also, if you take it step by step, instead of looking at the child, that child needs to be at that level in comparison to his or her peer, age-wise. We have to remember that child with autism might not be emotionally or intellectually at that age. If that child is, say, chronologically is a 12 years of age, but emotionally or intellectually that child might be 6 years of age. So we can't put that child in a 12-year-old classroom and expect him to achieve the same level as a 12-year-old when his intellectual capacity, when his cognitive capacity, when his emotional capacity as a 6 years of age. So we can't teach that person complex mas'alas or hadiths or tajweed rules or Arabic languages and many things. We can't. We have to take it slowly, and we have to break it down. Because children with autism love simple things. They love visualize. Majority of the children with autism, they love visualize stuff. They love the routines. That's why pandemic and lockdown is having major issues at home for a lot of people who are living with children with disabilities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give a lot of ajr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate challenges, and may Allah ta'ala make it easy for you. Because that's what's happening. Children with disability, they love the routines. They love the visualization. So if you can visualize it, get them to draw, get them involved in art, get them to, everybody enjoys art. Even myself right now, I still love art, drawing. It's the easiest thing, and it's colorful. They love colorful things. But we have to be mindful that our aesthetics is also not impacting, it's not stimulating the mind too much. If it stimulates the mind too much, they will be literally, as they say, have you heard the phrase, they will be bouncing off the walls? They will be a bit like that. So we have to be mindful of the bright red lights and things like that.
Next question. How do we break the stigma in the Asian community? Someone I know struggles, but family do not understand, and just exclude you in everything because they see you as different. Yeah,
it's unfortunately it's not only stigma within the Asian community; it's stigma within all. Okay, let me repeat after you because it's quite.
How do we break the stigma?
How do you break the stigma within the Asian community?
Yeah. Someone I know struggles.
But
their family does not understand.
But their family does not understand.
And they just get excluded from everything.
And they just get excluded from
everything.
Everything. So I take it that person is being treated as secondary citizen, and they're seen as a burdensome, etc., etc. First and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alleviate this issue. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for that person, because the whole concept of otherness, if you haven't heard this concept, you'll hear it. Study it if you have the time. Otherness is basically you are not part of us. You are not similar to us. And it can be as little as I dress differently from you, or you dress differently from me, your skin color is different from myself, you speak a different language, or I have a better car than you. So it's being different. And when a person feels different and is treated as such, it has negative connotations, and it's quite detrimental for that person's emotional well-being. Now, how do you go about that? Is because in Islam, every child has to be treated equally. No child can be treated, no child can be prioritized over another child. The only time a child can be given priority treatment is if the child has additional needs. If the child has additional needs or any disabilities, then that child can be given, they can give priority treatment. Other than that, as a parent, they're not allowed. So they're breaking a fundamental aspect of Islam. So as a child or as a person, we need to talk to them. We need to talk to them, narmi ke saath, we need to talk to them in kindness. We can't go and say what you're doing is wrong, absolutely, and cause a massive problem. No. We have to go with the mindset of education. Education is about helping someone to understand something better, not to do malamat, not to belittle that person. No, because if you're belittling that person, then you're not. What's the word? You're not reaching your target, and you're not achieving anything. In fact, you'll do complete other way around. So how we can do that again is if you get somebody who understands these things and they have a good relationship with the family, you need to liaise with them, three-party liaison, and give them some literature, maybe put a bayan on regarding that, maybe got some Islamic hadiths around equal treatment, that kind of things, and give it and talk about that. That's very important. So raising it to them. Sometimes if they're adults and you're a child, then that makes it extra difficult. Okay, and then we need to be mindful of that, inshallah. Hope that satisfies. If further information is needed, we can get in contact with us and we'll do one-to-one talk with you and we'll do some resolution for you guys, inshallah.
Next question. How do we identify and prioritize learning needs for individuals?
Oh, mashallah, learning needs. It depends. Are you talking from a maktab perspective, school perspective? Are you talking about from a home perspective? Are we talking about, what question was, how do you prioritize?
How do you identify and prioritize learning needs of individuals?
How do you prioritize and identify learning needs of individuals? SubhanAllah, there is a study, there is a tool that you can utilize online. Right now, I haven't got the access to, but the learning style is 4 different types. Kinetic, there's 4 different learning types. One is the person who's visualized, one is the person who likes to do it by hands, one is the person who likes to think, they like the theories, and one person is just like to get on with it. So it's how do you prioritize that is, if you're a parent, you clearly have seen your child what they excel in. If you, like for example, this discussion that I'm doing, typically when I'm doing my workshops, I don't like to discuss like that because typically we are retaining only 15% of the information that's been shared. So what I tend to do with my talks is I do interactive talks, group work, engagement. Some will be visualized, some will be on PowerPoint, some will be just me talking talking to you, then getting you to ask questions. So interaction. So to identify, if you're a teacher, you need to look for these little signs. For example, I was dealing with a child for 3 years. All I was hearing about that child is he's naughty, he's silly, he doesn't concentrate, he doesn't do his sabak, etc., 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 etc. Because his age was slightly younger and I was dealing with a teenager, older plus, 13 plus. So finally, because nobody could handle him, they gave the child to me. And he was only 9 years of age. So I took an exception. I said, okay, TK, I've been teaching his brother, so I know how the family is, the child is good. So I took on the child and instantly I recognized that whenever he reads, he makes silly mistakes from the Quran and he makes silly mistakes. So I said, why did you read like that? He goes, I don't know. And he said, he would freeze. I said, why are you freezing? Am I going to hurt you? He goes, no. Am I going to hit you? No. Did I shout at you? No. Did I slap you? No. Nothing. So if I'm not hurting you, then why are you freezing? So that was very interesting for me because I found immediately that he went defensive mode. Why did he go defensive mode? I realized immediately whenever he made a mistake, people would belittle him. And I wasn't doing. I said, I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to belittle you. I want to know what's wrong. Then I asked him. I said, you made these silly mistakes. Are you seeing the numbers or the writing of the Quran any different? Do you see anything on the writing? He goes, Ustadji, yes, I do. I see the letters and the has and the bas and the ayn or wrong way around. And I get confused. Sometimes I see the zabar here, sometimes I see the pesh over there, sometimes I see shining things here, and I just can't, sometimes I can't connect it together. So I said, okay, it's interesting. What else do you see? Do you have the same problem in school? He goes, yes, he goes, literally, I see the words and the letters flying around. Like a magic, goes, I see everything flying around. And I knew instantly, there's a telltale sign, there's some signs of dyslexia. And that's what dyslexia does. So I said, okay. I said, what do you like doing? He goes, I love art. I said, okay. If you want to stay in my class and you want to do this, fantastic. Every day when you come to me, if you the 2.5 hour session, if you come here, you give your 3 items of sabak. The 3 items of sabak is, 1 surah, your nazira and your tajweed. As soon as the moment you've done that, you can do whatever you like. As long as you're not disturbing other people and within the boundaries of the classroom. But ideally, I want you to do an art of designing the entire madrasa, entire masjid, and do some nice stuff for the walls. And he absolutely loved it. Within the 30 days, he became the star pupil of the madrasa. Not only for this class, also the entire madrasa. Then that continued to spread within the other classrooms. And he never ever misbehaved. So it's about going to the root cause. What's distracting that person? Often we forget a child is naughty because there's a third reason. There's something else is behind that behavior. So instead of looking at the immediate presenting issues right in front of you, that person is talking, fighting, arguing, swearing, answering you back. What's causing it? What's behind it? And it's typically found in here. Emotions, feelings. Something is triggering, something is happening inside, that person is bubbling. So the question was, how do you prioritize the learning need of a child? Every child is unique, every child is different. Everything comes down to observation. It's how observant you are, how in tune you are with that child. If you're a teacher, there's an exercise that you can do, and that will tell you what type of learner that is, whether it's kinesthetic, whether it's visual, whether it's thinker. And I have it somewhere in one of my emails, and I could share that with the person privately. And if you're a parent, you should pick that up automatically from day one. You notice if the child is very good with these pieces. What are the pieces called? Legos, and whether the person loves playing with the phones, or whether the person likes reading and writing and coloring. And coloring, oh my God, subhanallah, is one of the most amazing therapeutic work a child can do. Just by watching the child color, you can develop that person's concentration, you can develop the person's behavior, you can develop the person's attitude, his learning style. Everything can be determined from that one drawing of the child. And if you positively, actively support the child by thanking that person, praising that person, rewarding that person, believe you me, when they get interested and just paida ho jate na, when they become more interested, that's when the child develops. So what happens is you need to take active interest in that child's life, because one of the key things we need to put in our head, child with learning disability is extra sensitive to his environment. That's it. Extra sensitive to everything that we take for granted. Triple, more, quadruple more sensitive to the environment. And they will always internalize their feeling. So it's your duty, my duty, our duty is to make that child feel comfortable in this unsensitive environment. Be it sound. A child with autistic going into a shopping center or going into driving, it can be quite excruciatingly painful for them in the ears. It can be excruciatingly painful for that person. They can hear sound which is about 2, 3, 4, 5 miles away, and you're thinking, I didn't hear anything. If a child is autistic, child saying, I hear something, believe that child, please. Because that's true to that person. They can hear something. You and I, we can't hear.
My daughter has Down syndrome.
Allahu Akbar.
She is 12 years old. I have on several occasions tried to get her to learn the Quran, but she doesn't learn. What is the reason for this?
Okay, I have a daughter who has got Down syndrome and she's 12 years old. I want her to learn the Quran. I'm struggling to teach her the Quran. I've tried everything. What can I do? Sister, sister, I take it. Sister, my understanding of Down syndrome is very limited, and I have to be completely honest with you, but I can get all the information for you. If you email us, inshallah, and we can discuss that further. But Down syndrome, I know what it is. They are one of the most polarized cohorts within our community. They are very, very discriminated, unfortunately, within the community as well. And it's very heartbreaking for the parents because often they are precious. Every single child is precious. Every single child is like a diamond. With the right effort, that is child conducive, they will thrive. No matter what condition the child has, and whether it's all whether the child has got Down syndrome, whether the child's got dyspraxia, whether the child's got dyslexia. In fact, some of the most talented and gifted people in the entire world are people with learning disabilities. If you do a study within the secret services and all these people who are highly intelligent with mathematics and working in government level works and doing some these high caliber jobs, you'll find they got some form of condition. You'll find that they're either autistic or they're this or that, and it's because the environment was correct. It's amazing. So now, sister, for your Down syndrome, for what I can tell you or what I can share with you is you need the right resources. I don't think you have access to the right resources, to be honest with you. We need to, you know how normally typically in a school it's a 5-year syllabus, S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, S6, S7, then university. You might need a bit longer than that with the child to teach Islamic studies. If a child is picking 3 years up, she might need 6 years. But the resources has to be correct. Sensory type of resources has to be slowly, pictures, picture types of alphabets. In the Nurani Qaida that we teach, that might not be appropriate, because Nurani Qaida, if taught approximately, that can actually help you towards the specialist Qaraat class that is taught over 3 years. Because if you do that properly, you don't need 3-year course, you could do less than that. Then there's another type of Qaida that might not be appropriate. You might need big wallpaper, big poster type, and turn into a game. This is alif for Allah, or alif for something like that, and search for it together. So it's turned into a game, turned into a play. If you turn into a play and turn into a game, because I'm presuming that 12-year-old daughter is not 12 years old emotionally, it's probably about 6 years of age, or 8 or 7, around that age. And that's why maybe your resource needs to be looked into. Again, you can get in contact with us and we can do one-to-one consultation, inshallah. And I'll find you some resource, inshallah.
What different strategies can we use to help students with weaker capabilities?
Allahu Akbar, Allah. Expectations. What different strategies can we use for our students with the weaker capabilities? Okay, I always say to every single child that I've encountered in my life, it's not how brainy you are, how clever you are, it's the effort that matters. It's the effort, because I take it this is a question from a maktab teacher by the sound of things, or an Islamic teacher by the sound of it. I could be wrong, and I'm presuming here again, or it could be any teacher. In my experience and in my opinions, the two most greatest people in our life are our parents and our teachers. And all parents and every single teachers, they want their next generation, meaning the children and the students, to be better than them. I always set challenge to my children, to my students. I said, I want you to be better than me. Come back to me in 5 years time or 10 years and say, Ustaji, I've done this and this. If you can beat me, I'll give you a prize, inshallah. That's the whole point. The whole point is I want the next generation to be better than the previous generation. Because then you know that, alhamdulillah, your work has been accepted, or you've done a good job, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now you fulfill your obligation. Amana. Because children are amana. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us on the day of judgment, what have we done? Every single second. If you're a maktab teacher, your time starts 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Every single second matters. If you're a school teacher, your duty matters. Well, this is bare minimum duties. We have to go a bit extra. If your class starts at 5 o'clock, we need to be there 4:45, because and leave at quarter past 7, 50 minutes before, 50 minutes afterwards, because during the environment, when you're going in, the child should come and see you inside, not you going to see the child inside, because then getting the focus of the child will take another 15 minutes and you lost valuable 15 minutes. Then getting into the learning zone will take another 15 minutes. So you lost. So you're constantly playing a losing battle. So planning is key. Planning for a child's overall achievements. That child has got low achievement. What can I do to improve that child? You need the parents together with you. Parents is critical in this. It's a journey together. Teachers cannot work alone. Parents cannot work alone in isolation. You need the both parties working together. If a strategy is working at home, that strategy needs to be shared with the teacher, be it a maktab teacher or school teacher. If the school teacher strategy is working at school, that strategy needs to be shared at home. Because nothing happens in isolation. If a child, I said that before, if a child is not achieving well in school, that child, it's near impossible that child will be achieving well in maktab. Or if a child is achieving really well in school and the child is not achieving in maktab, something here is not correct. The environment is not correct, or the strategies are not being shared correctly. So both parties need to work together, and that's why we say professional working together. You need to work together. Because now what kind of strategies you can do? Give them achievable targets. Set achievable targets. We can't put every single child on the same benchmark. Because chronologically they might be 12 years of age, but emotionally and intellectually they will be below. So we can't put the same benchmark and the same expectation, same understanding as a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old. We can't. We just cannot do that. So set low targets. As soon as they increase that, continues to increase that, and you continues to increase that. But we can't set so low expectation that then it becomes very easy. There's a fine balance between making it easy and challenging, achievable but challenging. There has to be a sense of achievement, and every time they achieve something, well done, mashallah, excellent, fantastic, rewarding. How often are we liaising with our parents? The maktab that I was running initially, I said everybody has to be in touch with the teacher at least once a month. Not in the shops, not when I'm in the shops and doing my shopping. Not when I'm driving around or doing something. No, I'm not interested. If you're asking me, well, how is my son doing? I don't want to talk to you. I will quite rudely tell you, I'm not interested in talking to you right now. Make an appointment, come to me in the masjid or come to me in school hours and talk to me. Then I know you genuinely care for your child. Otherwise, I happen to bump into you in the shop. So how's my son passing? You're talking. You're just making small talk. You don't mean anything. So partnership between parents, partnership between teachers, partnership between mentors, and making sure the environment they're in, the classroom, if the classroom is they're not getting bullied, making sure they're getting along with the peers, making sure there's no profanities, making sure the teachers we are prepared, making sure we have a lesson plan in place, making sure that we have a record of what that person has been studying so far. Everything needs to be there. If I'm sitting down with a parent every 6 months or every 2 months, I need to have my evidence. Do I have my evidence? Then accordingly, when a pattern will come up. Why is on a Friday or why is on a Sunday or why is on a Thursday the child is absent? Is something wrong? Is it the person sitting next to another child who's picking on them without you knowing? So a lot of observation. Liaison, partnership. I hope that satisfies, inshallah.
Can you give us some, what are the benefits of reciting short surahs to children from a young age?
Subhanallah, that's amazing. What's the benefit of talking to a child when the child is in the womb? Oh, let me question again. What's the benefit of reciting short surahs to a child?
From a young age.
From a young age,
Before they go to sleep.
Subhanallah. I mean, what can I say? Surah Ayatul Kursi and these surahs and Qul A'udhu bin Nas, Surah Al-Kawthar. If you pray Surah Al-Kawthar, Alhaakum at-takathuru hatta zurtum al-maqabir, that surah, one time then according to some riwayat and according to some ulamas, that it's equivalent to 1/6 or 1/5 of the reading the whole entire Quran. I have to double check that, inshallah. But the question is, let me take it one step further. What is the benefit of talking to a child when they're inside the womb of a mother? Is there a benefit? We talk about talking to a child and reading Quran. Subhanallah, there's nothing better than this. This is amazing. Behavior, and you are shaping the child's future. You are building the environment, one of sukoon, one of Quran. When you read the Quran, you're bringing Allah's rahmah. A house where there's no zikr, where there's no remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is like a dead house. It's like a graveyard. So you're praying dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're doing Quran in the house, you're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the house. If you can do that, if every household could do that, subhanallah, every household will be like a live house. This is amazing. It's basically learning starts from the day you start the whole aspect of conception, because there is a dua. That again, I've written it down so I could share it with you. Unfortunately, I haven't. It's in the hadith. I was reading it yesterday in the morning as well. You know, everything we can't remember at the last minute, because it's not easy standing here or sitting here and talking. Believe me, it's quite difficult. So inshallah, I'll share it with the guys, and they could put it maybe under the video or something like that, and we can. The dua, because if you pray the dua before the intercourse between the man and the woman, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the child free and bari and safeguard from the evilness of this world, and many benefits in that regards. Starts from there. Then you continue with that. You know, whenever we enter the house, we say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or the dua for entering the house, and you do salam. What happens? Shaitan says there is no sleeping place, there's no eating place in here. So house becomes void and empty of shaitan. Then you pray in Quran. When you pray, the Ayatul Kursi and the short surahs like four quls, what happens? The asarat of the shayateen goes away. The child is sleeping content. So instead of putting music and hip hop, and they put classic music, say it's tranquil, it's going to make you fall asleep. Subhanallah, you're putting haram things on. But you're putting the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place, the angels gather around that place. So if one person is praying and you as a mother or a father, and together you're a group, that's a jamaat. So when a jamaat is taking place, jamaat group is remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happens? Angels sit around the gathering and they make a line all the way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the angels, what are you here? What's going on? Then they tell Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what they have witnessed. That, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your slaves are remembering you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks rhetorically, I can't even get the words now, rhetorically to the angels, have they seen me? They go, no, they haven't seen you, ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But towards the end of the discussion between the angels and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happens? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I have forgiven them. So, amazing. What you're doing, you're remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if a child is reading the Quran, before he or she sleeps and wakes up, wakes up with the dua, Alhamdulillahi alladhi ahyana ba'da ma amatana wa ilayhi nushur. What more amazing? That's called a real environment at home. Everything starts from home. Learning starts from home. Subhanallah, may Allah ta'ala give you khair, may Allah ta'ala accept your efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq to implement that kind of environment in our household.
Guys, we've got lots of questions, but this will be the last one as we're running out of time. So,
Allahu Akbar.
how do you deal with a negative attitude towards learning?
How do you deal with a negative attitude towards learning? Subhanallah. It's let me give a story. Let me give my own experience. I remember I had a student who came to learn tajweed with myself, and mashallah, I think he was 13, and he was super clever. So he was super self-confident. So when I said to him, mashallah, you read such beautifully, even the zombies would be dead again. In other words, his tajweed was so terrible, I felt I felt really bad, and I didn't want to belittle that child because it's not correct. I said, your tajweed is really, really poor, unfortunately, and the child didn't like it. So I asked that person, look, read here, and can you explain to me these rules? And he couldn't. So he recognized his own mistakes. When he recognized his mistake, I said, look, you're a Hafiz Sahib, mashallah. That means tomorrow you'll be leading me, because I'm not Hafiz Sahib. During the month of Ramadan, you'll be leading me. So you're my Imam. So I need to be confident in my Imam, that the Imam will be leading his teachers correctly. And that sort of hit him really hard. So when that hit him, I said, you need to study. So when I taught him, I made everything wadahat, meaning clarified. So I clarified, I said, look, this is the reason, so explanation. And what I found was, then that way he got really interested. So creating an interest. So how do you create interest? Typically give them rewards, explain to them the benefits of doing certain things. And as a parent, I also know many parents, if the child becomes Hafiz, they take them for Umrah, holidays abroad, or give them a PlayStation, or take them away some different nice exotic places. Literally a treat, a big treat. So we need to do that with our children as well. If you're a school teacher, if you're a madrasa teacher, there's usually a reward to hard work. There's usually a reward to hard work. Some people use a reward chart stickers in primary school, or the M1s in the middle schools, in a junior school we call it in England. And so there should be a reward. There should be a reward expected from the child. If I do this, my parents are going to give me this. Even if it's a 50p, it's not the 50p that what they can do with this, the fact that they were rewarded. You've given it to them. They'll value that a lot more than if you give £100 in a different context. Because child doesn't understand the value of £100. It's only when you start working and when you're getting paid that money, then you start valuing that money. Until then, million is nothing to that person. Give the child £1 million and say, this is you're a millionaire and what? It doesn't mean anything. So rewarding a hard effort, feeling of earned, I earned that. A token of respect, token of love, token of showing to that person, you know what, you matter to me. What you're doing, it means something to me. And I will praise you. Not only will I praise you in front of me, I will praise you in front of other people. I will acknowledge you in front of other people. So acknowledgement of amongst his peers. If it's a teenager, they don't want to be acknowledged by you as the parent or the teacher, but they want to be acknowledged by the fellow peers, as in the fellow students. If they say, well done, that's good, man, then the child will feel really happy. If you say, well done, better, they might not necessarily, budde ho gaya. The old man, what does he know? You know that disconnection between the youth and the old? But if the fellow student, another one said, mashallah, you're doing really well, that will mean a lot to that person. So we need to create that kind of environment, appreciation, love, muhabbat, respect. Child needs to feel that you respect that person. If you're talking to the child belittling manner and you're shaming in front of his friends and colleagues, they're not going to respect you. They're not going to reciprocate your words. It's not going to happen. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost accept what has been said. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to create a household environment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to educate our next generation, because every single one of the child is a gem, is a diamond. All it needs a bit of a polishing, and inshallah these youngsters will tomorrow be leaders. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a sabab. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to play active role in these children becoming tomorrow's leaders. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. And before I leave, if there's any pressing issues, you are welcome to get in contact with us, and the email address is available on the comments, and inshallah we will see what we can do for you. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.